2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brannon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us. Are daily check-ins good or bad for a relationship? Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin. Tyler,
what's going on, B?
Not much. What's one new thing you're doing this week?
One new thing. Actually, I got a kind of a cool thing. Sunday dinner. I didn't get to go to Sunday dinner last night, but my daughter was down there, and I had a friend of mine. He had a firearm that was kind of came up through his family. Like, his grandfather passed it down to his father, passed it down to him. And nobody in his family has much interest in firearms, so he sent it to me, and he actually got it to you first, and then you gave it to my daughter, and we opened it up last night, and for my daughter, because she likes to go out and do those things with me, and he wanted to pass it on to somebody.
He just froze on me. Tyler, you just froze.
I've got you.
Tyler, you there? Sorry, I was totally frozen out there for a minute.
Are you back?
So, anyways.
Are you back?
I think we're back. We're back. Okay. So you were talking about this gun.
Yeah, the gun. I don't know how far I got into the story, but basically a friend of mine wanted to pass it down to somebody who'd continue to pass down tradition with this thing. And so we opened it up last night, and so my daughter was all excited about it. We're going to go out this week probably and actually see how it shoots and try to sight it in and get the scope working right. And so that'll be the thing we're doing this week.
Nice. I mean, how nice is that?
It's so awesome.
Jeez,
people are so incredible that way. And I was like, well, what's going on? And he was just kind of like, all I really want is I want to hear about what it's like the first time you shoot it and the first time you hunt with it and the first time. He's like, I just want to stay connected to the story of the gun.
That is so cool.
So
it's awesome.
Pretty cool.
So I want to hear how you're going to pay it forward.
I know. I mean,
someone just gave you a gun. Guns are things you give to your kids, and they give to their kids, and they last forever.
Somehow I just got looped into the family generations of that other friend.
Yeah. So you got to pay it forward big time, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're going to do, but you owe karma a debt now.
I know.
There's something.
I got to go find somebody else to pass something along to.
I'm not saying you have to. I shouldn't overstep my bounds.
No, it's true though. That's the way I feel about it. There's a whole bunch of gratitude in there about like, man, I'd love to be able to do something of the same equivalent for somebody else. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's really cool of him. And I know who gave it to you, and he's the man. And just want to shout out to him. So that's awesome. All right, should we get right back into this check-ins thing?
Yeah, let's go for it, man.
Maybe we could back up just a little bit, Tyler. Back in my Jody days and way back when I started years ago, I was just kind of watching the type of therapy that was going on. And one thing that a lot of the therapists were doing, they were helping couples set up these check-ins at night. And what these check-ins were usually this was the case. The husband was pretty religious guy, got caught or came out with an issue with pornography. The wife is freaked out, doesn't know what to do, devastated. Different levels of taking it personal. Trauma, sometimes pretty intensely, sometimes not so much. But what would happen is the therapist and the couple would set up this system where they do a check-in about his sobriety every day. And he checks in and talks about his lust triggers, talks about whether he had any relapses or slips, goes through the list of basically how good a boy he's been for the day with his sexuality. And what do you know, Tyler? This didn't yield very good results that I saw. It would amplify anxiety. It would set the fear cycle on fire. It would trigger shame from the guy, and just like he had zero masculinity in the whole thing. And ultimately, for the relationship, it destroyed safety. It was counterproductive to what they were actually trying to rebuild and trying to create.
Yeah, I think Brannon, there were some principles behind that were good principles, but then they kind of got twisted into reinforcing the wrong patterns rather than the healthy patterns that they were trying to grow into. So the reason why couples would set up a check-in would be, number one, we're trying to rebuild trust. And so one way that we can rebuild trust is through practicing honesty. And if one or both partners has lived a life where they've learned to be dishonest to get through life, the practice of honesty would theoretically be a good thing. Right. So that's one reason why those check-ins were there. The other thought is that when couples check in and there's honesty, that will rebuild trust. That would also maybe potentially help rebuild intimacy and connection. And so there's some level of vulnerability that's also in play inside of that check-in, and theoretically that would be a great thing for a relationship. Where it seemed to go wrong is that it more often turned into a perpetuation of the fear and shame cycles, because it turned into like a probation check-in, report on myself for all the things I did wrong today and how bad it was, rather than for the intended purposes originally. Because the focus became so fully focused on sobriety and your recovery work and everything else, and it didn't include so many other parts of what actually really does work for couples when they do check-ins properly.
Right. So it's interesting you bring up honesty and vulnerability, because a lot of the time it was intended for that and it created the opposite. And what I mean by that is like I'll give you some extreme examples. Like I remember one couple, he would ride the bus home from work and she would ask, tell me about all the women that were on your bus today. Right. And so in honesty and vulnerability, and I put that in quotation marks, he'd say, well, there was this one woman in a red dress that was toward the front. There was another woman, wearing a green shirt in the back. Like, so
And then as he reports that, he's doing because he doesn't want to be in trouble.
Yeah, he wants to be honest.
She's hearing that and she's being crushed that he noticed all those women.
And think what happens when he gets on that bus. He's hyper focused on who he's not supposed to notice. So what is he doing? Noticing them. So, but here's the honesty piece that I'm talking about. When he gets to that interaction with his wife, and let's say she's saying, "Hey, the therapist said I need to know about all your lust triggers. So who was on your bus?" What would honesty look like?
I think honesty might even start with a curious question back there.
Okay. But why do you want to know?
It's like, yeah, how is this going to help?
Yeah. Well, the therapist told us that.
What do you need? What are you really looking for here?
We're just making sure you're not slipping.
Yeah.
We're making sure you're not slipping. So that's what we're doing right now.
So I'm hearing that you're feeling fearful about me slipping. That's what you're worried about.
Well, I'm worried about it because of,
it makes total sense.
The issue. Yeah.
100%. That makes sense to me. I can only imagine what it's like to hold on to that fear.
So who was on the bus?
I guess I'm just wondering, before we talk about that, how that's going to help your fear.
Because then I'll know what you're actually doing. You've hidden it for years. So I need honesty from you. Gotcha. So I need honesty from you. So that's why we need to talk about this.
Okay. And then at that point, what I would probably do, Brannon, is I would say, okay, I'm not sure this is going to be helpful, but yeah, let's go.
I wouldn't. I think we differ.
And the reason I would, maybe in that scenario, is because at that point, I'm feeling like my partner's going to have to have some experience and do some learning to realize that conversation isn't the actual conversation that's going to help us.
Yeah. I would say something like, I can assure you I didn't have any issues with lust today, but I'm not willing to go through this process with you. That's
honest as well.
That doesn't work for me. And she might come back with, well, the therapist said we should, but that's honest. Like, if it really doesn't work for you, that's honest, right? Or you know what? I'd like to talk about this in our next therapy session.
That's
something
always
like
a good
that.
one.
Something like that. But to cave in that moment and be like, okay, I'm going to do something that I don't feel good about. You are becoming Mr. Nice Guy and manipulating the situation to then try to create safety, and you're actually destroying it.
It depends on your motive. Like, if my motive is to actually say, okay, we're going to go through this experience so that there can be some learning that this isn't the right conversation, then that's okay too.
True, as long as you're like honest about that.
It's happened 1,000 times before. I mean, even from my own personal experience, I've had the conscious thought of like, man, this isn't going to work. But when it gets so rooted in so far, it's like, well, I deserve honesty. It's like, I don't think this is going to be very helpful. Well, okay, here we go. And then right afterwards, it's like, I shouldn't have asked that. I didn't need to know that. It's like, okay. So then the next time the conversation comes up,
you say, "I told you so." No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah, you definitely don't do that. But the next time that conversation comes up, then you go, "Hey, is this one of those moments like this, or should we talk about something different?" Because I can tell you're hurting and you're scared and you're worried, and I can assure you that I'm doing my work, and here's how I'm doing my work. I don't think that this detailed conversation is going to be helpful, right? But I'm here,
right?
But
to some degree, a boundary is important. Like,
absolutely.
If there's always okay, I can break you down. I will break you down. I can and I will. That's a problem. And the honesty sometimes is sitting in that space with your partner of discomfort in a loving way. Of like, I know this isn't what you want to hear. I know this is the hard thing. I'm trying my best to create trust and safety with you. And I need to be honest with you. This isn't working for me. I can't fix this issue right now for you, but I'm here for you. If you want to talk about it, you want to talk about how you feel and where you're at, I'm here for you. But so yeah, let's rewind back to these check-ins, Tyler. There's another point that I want to look at, if you don't mind. And it's this thing about, healthy attachment when it comes to sexuality in a relationship. Should I know everything that my wife thinks and does as a sexual being? My spouse, my partner. Should I know everything?
I don't think if I'm in your shoes, I don't know that I'd want that personally.
Why?
Well, just because it would just be there's so much that is just passing fleeting thoughts that's just kind of like noise.
Right.
I don't know that I want all the noise.
Don't I have a right to it though?
A right?
Yeah, as her partner, her sexuality, her fidelity is all about me, right?
I'd love to be in a relationship with someone where we both have the understanding that there would be complete openness, but we both understand that there's certain things that aren't effective.
Right, Tyler, right there is so important. What you just said. So, explain that and understanding.
Willingness. If two partners are in a relationship where they're both willing to be fully open and exposed to each other, but they also understand that there's certain things that just aren't going to be effective, that's the right relationship to be in. What you don't want to be in with a relationship with somebody who's unwilling to be that open because they're wrapped up in their shame and their trauma and their own self-protections. And that's where you're going to feel that wall of disconnection inside the relationship, right? It's the unwillingness that is actually the problem. It's not the actual sharing all the time.
Right. So, because I've seen plenty of times where the one partner goes out of their way to go overboard to disclose as much as they possibly can because they're worried that they're not being an honest partner.
And then it crushes the other partner and they're stuck in this heavy burden of having to sort through everything all the time.
Right.
Even though there was possibly safety already in the relationship because the person who's disclosing has actually gotten really good at managing and letting go of whatever those thoughts were.
We got to build a matrix worksheet, Tyler, here, because it's what we're saying is if I'm unwilling to disclose anything, it doesn't create safety. If I'm trying to disclose everything because I want to make sure that I'm an honest person, that doesn't build safety in a relationship. Neither one do, right?
Mm-hmm. So, but if we're both willing and we're boundaried, and we understand that and we feel that from one another, that's where safety and trust are.
Right. It's my spouse, I'm just as an example, my spouse can have her sexual thoughts, feelings, whatever. That's great. I trust her that she's not going to go out and really hurt me and do things. Therefore, I don't need to ask everything, right? And I think this is where when betrayal comes into the picture, it throws this whole dynamic off kilter, where it's okay, this is great in a trusting relationship where we can each have our autonomous sexuality and openness about that sexuality so that we know each other. That's beautiful. It's wonderful. But you throw betrayal in the mix and it's okay, autonomous sexuality, what? That's just one big trigger here.
Well, it's just scary. It makes it really scary.
Right. And that's where these check-ins then come into place, where it's okay, we can't have that. And so it's really hard for a couple, I think, to back up and be let's practice what healthy attachment actually looks like. Let's have boundaries with each other. Let's talk it out if we get really triggered as we practice this healthy attachment and start to move toward real trust and safety in the relationship.
That's right. Maybe we could talk a little bit about what a good check-in would entail. Is that all right, Brannon?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
I know you and I have different feelings on check-ins, but there's different.
I don't think too different, actually.
Okay. I don't think there's anything wrong with regular check-ins. I think it's setting the intentions for the check-ins and being very, very boundaried about what those intentions are that will make them either effective or not effective.
Yeah.
Right. And there's lots of different kinds of check-ins. Different people have made different sort of formulas. There's one that's really common right now called FANOS, which is where each partner comes and they check in on their core emotion for the day. They talk about like an affirmation or appreciation for the other person. They express a need. They share ownership for anything that they need to take ownership for. And then they share any struggles that they're currently having. Like that's one format. Or
that's beautiful.
The traditional way that we were taught was like, we check in physically, emotional, spiritual, social, sexual, and we just kind of do a mindfulness check in and express those things to my partner. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I think more important than the actual structure and like format is what you were saying, Brannon, earlier about the boundaries around it. So like with the way that I kind of teach my check-ins with people is if they're doing, say, the physical, social, spiritual, emotional, sexual check-ins, there's rules, and we section time off, and each partner is going to share. So it's not just a one-way street. And the partner who's sharing is going to try to do a mindful check-in, and they're going to try to go into a little bit of detail to practice sharing. And the partner who's receiving can only do a couple of things. The partner who's receiving can only practice empathy and ask clarifying questions. They can't solve a problem. They can't rebut things. They can't argue. All they're doing is trying to show empathy and ask clarifying questions. And then
make that sound so easy.
Yeah. And then the partnership switches. But when you actually practice those things, now you're practicing empathy, you're practicing boundaries, you're practicing some honesty, and both partners are learning the skill of how to hold the other person without it becoming this like same old routine fight over, well, I disagree with you on that, or I don't agree with you in this, or you should have done that, or why didn't you do this? It's more of like, tell me more. I want to understand that more. Oh, that you must have been feeling this or this or this. Or if I was in your shoes, I'd be experiencing that. So you're actually building in what is usually the lost part of communication for couples by the time they hit our office, which is the empathy piece and the understanding piece. And you could do that. Yeah. You could do the same kinds of rules with the Thanos check-in if you wanted. Feelings, affirmations, needs, ownership, struggles.
Yeah. Right. You'll notice the difference in energy behind these. So like what you just described, Tyler, with both of these techniques is about actual connection and presence with each other. It's just holding space, connecting, seeing each other, validating, understanding, which is way different than a check-in that is about fear and control. Like, I'm afraid of you, and we're here to control something, and so let's check in because I'm in a lot of fear, and it's almost two completely different things that we call it both a check-in, but they're two completely different things. One of them destroys your relationship. One of them actually starts to lay the groundwork for the foundation of a relationship that is built on trust and safety.
That's right. And the difference is, and this is normal, Brannon, when there's been some kind of a betrayal or a compulsive behavior addiction inside of a relationship, relationships tend to move to a power and control kind of design in the relationship, because that's how people try to stay safe. And they move away from a connection-based relationship. And so what you're looking for, the reason we got into relationships in the first place, is to be in a connection-based relationship. And so if I'm going to stay in this relationship and work on this recovery that I'm working on, I want to be engaging in the check-in process in a way that's going to reinforce moving from power and control into connection, and not the other way around. Because if I'm reinforcing power and control, then I am reinforcing all of those things that we were trying to climb out of.
Right.
And what we're trying to move back towards is connection-based relationship, which includes healthy boundaries, both people knowing who they are, being able to hold space for one another. And there can still be that honesty inside of that check-in that then allows a partner who may not be feeling safe to go, ooh, like if I came home and checked in on something and it was like, even though during the check-ins I could hear it and hold space, in the aftermath I'd have to come back and say, that didn't sit real well with me, and because of that I need to do X, Y, and Z. Right. Like when you said you sat and talked for 15 minutes to the girl next to you in the next cubicle over, that was a little triggering for me, and so I'm going to need a little bit of space to get my feet planted and decide what I want to do with that.
Right.
but that's different than, oh, and what else, right?
Right.
There's another part to check-ins, in quotes, that I think is helpful, is that oftentimes the partner feels like, who's been like betrayed, feels like it's their duty to hold the space while the other person checks in on their honesty. And a lot of times that's too overwhelming, and there's too much emotional swirling, and they have their own kind of needs that they need to attend to emotionally to be the one to hold all of the partner's honesty. And so I also recommend that both partners actually have, this is where group work comes in, or a sponsor comes in. They actually have another person where they do a lot of their actual recovery work, and then they come and they share with their partner the work that they're doing rather than telling on themselves. So if I cross some of my lines of defense today, my partner needs to know that, because that's a safety marker for her, but she doesn't need to be the one to hash out what happened and what I'm doing to reset my lines of defense and everything else. I'm going to do that with a group member or a therapist or something and reset my lines. And then I'm going to come to my partner and sit in the check-in process and say, hey, I ran into a bottom line today. This is what happened. This is who I talked to. This is what I realized. This is my plan to move forward. How are you feeling? Right. Yeah. Instead of like that partner then having to go do all of that work for you.
Right. Yeah. In fact, like, disclosure should happen not because of a check-in. Disclosure should happen because you have gotten accountable with those people supporting you, and you've gotten honest with yourself. And so then you go disclose something that you need to in order to get back into your integrity, right? Which is way different than, every day I'm just scared of myself and scared of, that you might be mad at me. So let's go through the whole, day to make sure I'm not a bad boy. You look at it, Tyler, from the lens of attachment, anxious, avoidant, and secure. If you look at check-in through that lens, anxious attachment is about sitting down every night and going through all the details. Avoidant is not having check-ins because you're scared to have connection at all. And secure attachment is coming together and being like, hey, I trust myself. I know you. Let's talk. Let's get present. Let's get honest with who we are, and we can be boundaried where we need to. And it's beautiful. It works really well, right?
When it's done right.
When it's done right. And so it's kind of a catch-22, Tyler, because when there's things like sex addiction going on, you don't snap your fingers and it's like, hey, do a check-in where you're both, in secure attachment when you do it.
Right. That's the challenge. And I think what we're trying to do is set the right parameters so there's the practice of secure attachment in those check-ins, because the truth is one or both partners isn't going to be coming to those check-ins every day from a place of security.
Right.
But that's the practice.
But the beauty of it, and this is what's awesome about relationship, is if, let's say, one partner or the other comes with anxiety to the interaction, the other partner can help co-regulate the situation. If they're secure, if one partner is secure, then that interaction between them won't turn into anxious unless they turn into anxious. If they stay in that secure attachment, that other partner will probably come to them, or the situation won't happen.
Or they'll end up with a timeout of some sort.
Right, because that secure person is strong enough to hold whatever is.
Yeah, I remember being in a training when I was in the drug courts, and we were talking about attachment theory, and then we were talking about the emotion-focused couples stuff. And they did that infinity loop that's in emotion-focused couples. And he was training, and he said, everyone talks about how it takes two to tango, or there's always two parts to the story, or whatever else, And he said, that's true. He's like, but it only takes one to break this cycle. And his whole point was, if you focus on yourself and your part in the cycle, you can actually break the whole cycle by just growing into a new space yourself.
Right.
Because it naturally then invites a change to the whole system when you learn to do that. So it only takes one to break the cycle.
I'm not going to dance with you in the unhealthiness. And here's the trick, Tyler. A lot of times the person with the anxiety or the unhealthy attachment is like, see, you're the worst. You're abandoning me. Like, this is I knew this would happen. And the person who's strong and healthy, they can actually hang in there with that too, where it's like, "Hey, tell me how you're feeling. I'm here for it."
Yeah.
But
otherwise that would be avoided. And if they're like, yep, talk to the hand, I'm out of here.
Yeah, like, see ya, I am abandoning you. Boom, right? Versus like, I see your fear, I see your anxiety, I'm here for you, right? Am I going to cave on things to go dance there with you? No. I'm going to have boundaries around certain things.
And if I do take some time away, I'll check back on you.
I'll come back because I have the strength to do that. And I can show up. But I can show up in form. I can show up as me with integrity and not have to capitulate to the situation in order to try to be good. Right. So on both ends, like, I hope our audience can hear what we're saying is we want you to check in. Absolutely. But make those check-ins about love, not fear.
Check in, but make sure that you're clear on what you're going for. And if you're going for a connection-based relationship, then it needs to have certain structures and boundaries to practice connection-based relationships instead of just defaulting to what is likely a power and control-based relationship based off of the pain that you've been through together.
Right.
We're trying to change that. We don't want to reinforce it. And so if you find that you're wrangling with each other every night in check-ins, that means that you haven't created the right space to practice that connection-based, accountability, humility, empathy, honesty, and boundaries.
So Tyler, what do I do if I suspect something? So it's like, okay, is this my trigger? Is this like, let's use your example from earlier. Like, they talked to this person at work for 15 minutes or whatever. Yeah. And I'm suspecting there's flirting going on. There's some inappropriateness to their relationship. I suspect those things, but I don't really know.
Right.
So how do I have a check-in, and how do I address that?
Well, I think again, if we're looking at a kind of connection-based check-in, there's a different way to ask that question too, or to approach that subject. And one would be like, "Hey, I think you're having an affair," versus, "Man, when you said those things, I had all of this stuff come up inside of me, and I felt really scared and insecure. And maybe it's some old stuff. I don't know if it's old or new stuff. And I got to check in with you and just kind of, I'm just wondering, was there more to that conversation than what you're leading on to?"
Okay. And if there was, so let's say the partner says, "You know what? I was flirting."
That hurts bad.
Ugh.
Like, I'm probably gonna need to do something about that, because I don't feel that actually just confirms to me that I'm not actually really safe right now.
Is this a good thing for the relationship?
It depends.
I actually think it is.
There's honesty now in both ways. There's the opportunity now for me, if I'm playing this part, to then go and actually set some boundaries that I can do to get myself grounded and planted emotionally again, and figure out what my next steps of action are going to be based off of what I was just given. Right?
I think it's important to understand, Tyler, like, we really start to play this thing with couples to understand what are the lines that you want to know that are important for fidelity in your relationship. Define fidelity for your relationship. How does that work? If you walk into work and you notice someone attractive, maybe it's an important line to say, "Look, we don't have to disclose those things." But if I'm flirting for 15 minutes, maybe that's a line that I've crossed that is important for me to be honest with you about, even if it really hurts you.
Yeah, those are the kinds of discussions that a lot of couples get confused about, because one partner thinks that this level of disclosure is what we've agreed on, and this level of disclosure is what I'm expecting. And
it's crazy how couples don't have conversations and define that for their relationship. They never do. They just get into the relationship, and it's like, well, I was taught this as a kid and you were taught that. And so we're just going to kind of assume what fidelity is between the two of us. And then they get in this like song and dance in the relationship of like, well, I don't think I did anything wrong, but did I? And if I'm anxious, then I'll be like, let me tell you everything. If I'm avoidant, I'll be like, nah, I didn't do anything, but like I did all this stuff, but I'm not going to tell you because it'll hurt you.
Yeah.
So I'm avoid. And so you get on both sides of that versus like, hey, let's get clear with each other about what our expectations are when it comes to our sexual fidelity. Like that's an adult conversation to have. That is crazy that couples don't have that conversation.
Yeah, right. And then they're living in the dark, and then there's a perception. And then when it does kind of start to come to light because it hasn't been discussed beforehand, that there's been dishonesty, when sometimes there is dishonesty, really, and sometimes it's just been, I didn't really think that was important, or that you wanted to know that.
Right. They actually sincerely believe that that's not something that I felt like.
But it's hard because sometimes that's also used in order to be dishonest,
Right.
So it's hard to tease that out. But if it's talked about proactively beforehand, then
you have the parameters.
There's a little bit more of a clearer picture for both partners, and it's easier to then follow through with whatever was agreed upon.
And sometimes I've seen where partners come and they say, our fidelity is that you just have attraction to me and that's it. And we got a question recently about, like I want my spouse to look down in public all the time, and it's like, and at that point in those discussions, don't agree to things that you can't fulfill.
Yeah, right.
And you got to then have hard conversations of like, look, this is what will work for me and what won't. I'm going to be honest with you about who I am right now, so that down the road, when we're dealing with these situations that we may or may not have to check in on, where I stand.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. Both partners need to be honest, and not just in the disclosing way, but in the boundary kind of way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you might come up against some compatibility issues with that.
Yeah, that's entirely
like
possible.
One partner's way over here and one partner's way over here, and it's like, okay, how do we navigate this one?
Yep.
So, Tyler, has this been helpful talking about check-ins?
I hope we don't leave people more confused than not. So really, to encapsulate what we said, it doesn't matter what structure you pick. Understand what you're going for, and then set some boundaries around what you're going for with whatever structure you pick. And you want empathy. You want the practice of empathy, the practice of honesty, the practice of holding space and presence, and the practice of being able to be like share who you really are with each other.
And if you're triggered and turning to, I'm going to put a check-in order to feel safe, watch out. And you might have to look within first to say, okay, I want to go use my tools, my support systems, regulate myself, so then I can have an actual good check-in with my partner. And we might talk about some hard things, but it's not about fear and control. It leads to love and connection.
Yeah.
Tyler, good talk.
Yeah, love to hear what people think of this or how they react or respond. We love having you here with us. Thank you for your support for us. And until next time, keep on keeping on.